Nice.
Oh,
Hi,
hey,
Daniel.
how's it going?
Good. It's so nice to meet you.
Yeah, and you guys, yeah. Whereabouts are you guys?
Well, we're New York City based, but I go to school in
Oh,
Boston, so I'm technically in Boston right now, but I'm like
oh, cool.
in New York most of the time.
Oh, very
Yeah.
nice, nice.
And
And whereabouts are you?
I'm in New York. Yes.
I'm back in London.
Oh,
Oh,
A little bit later here. Yeah,
yes.
it's good.
yeah,
Thank you for
yeah.
talking to us so late.
Yeah. Well, I just landed back from Toronto, so I'm still kind of on the same time zone as you guys, honestly.
Yeah. What were you working on?
I work on a Amazon show. It was the last like block 4 of this Amazon show, so that's done now. So that's kind of fun. So on to something else. See what's next.
Nice. And yeah, we're so excited to have you.
I saw that you liked the conversation we had with Rachel Fleet because we did have such an interesting conversation with her about her career path and sort of pivots and how hilariously she thought being 26 was like old, you know?
Oh, right.
Uh,
Okay. Yeah. Well, that
she
makes
said
me feel
like,
shit.
no, she said like, she said that she was afraid that like she thought that being, she was 26 years old and it was too old to pivot, which is of course hilarious. Of
That's
course,
yeah,
you could.
that's
I
ridiculous.
didn't
Yeah.
even start my career until I was my current career until I was 28.
Really? Okay. I mean, still, that's still quite, like, you can still
Yeah,
pivot
and
later than that,
finally,
I
and
think.
I thought I was so far behind because everybody had, 5 years already, just out of college working in the film business, and
Mhm.
so I thought I was like this old lady who was like I thought I was like continuing ed, you know?
Right. Fair enough.
So yeah, tell us about your project with Our Planet. I mean, I've seen like a lot about it, but I'm so interested to hear about how you came up with the idea to do it and how it came to fruition.
Mm, yeah, the documentary "Our Planet: The People, My Blood" is
Yes.
it's an expose. Oh yeah, you got to shorten it somehow. It's just yeah, I know we've been calling it Atomic Blood. Actually, that's kind of
I almost
the
feel
thing
like
of it.
calling it just Our Planet, but I know that's totally incorrect.
Yeah.
Oh, that's David Attenborough, isn't it? That's yeah, we've got
It
to be
is.
careful with stealing that one. Yeah, yeah. So the documentary is an expose on communities affected by nuclear weapons testing. So we basically travel the world finding these different communities that have been affected by nuclear weapons tests since the 40s and 50s, 60 all the way into the 90s kind of thing, and how that's still this really serious ongoing issue. And ultimately, it kind of has affected everyone, even alive today, you, me, everybody kind of thing. So it all started because I saw this short documentary by a guy called Morgan Nib, who was, I think he's a Dutch filmmaker. It was a video he did for Vice called What a Nuclear Weapons Explosion Feels Like. And it's these atomic veterans from the US and the UK, and they're all talking about how they were told to kind of stand in front of the explosion, like 20 miles away from where these things were going off, with their hands over their eyes and their eyes closed, facing away from the explosion. And the flash of this thing was so bright that through their closed hands and through their closed eyes, they could see the X-ray of their hands and the people in front of them, through their closed eyes, kind of thing. And this was just really like a crazy like visual for me, and it was just like, how have I
Yeah.
not heard about this like mad
Yeah.
thing before? I was like in my probably early 20s at the time. It was kind of weird that I hadn't heard of anything like this, or it wasn't like kind of in like education or anything like this before. And so I started talking to like friends and family about kind of sharing the video and stuff, and asking about it because it just kind of fascinated me. And I realized none of them know about it either. And it kind of became this thing, well, this would make a really great documentary. At the time, I'd only shot a lot of kind of scripted stuff, and I hadn't really done anything in the documentary world. And then, fast forward like about 6, 7 years later after that, I've been working on a few documentaries as a director of photography.
Wait, did you sit on this idea for 6 or 7 years? I just want to make sure I have that timeline right.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know what I was doing with documentary. So it was kind of
Right.
like,
Yeah, yeah,
well,
got it.
I don't really
I'm
want to
just
approach this
intrigued
thing just
by
like
that.
with no experience.
Yeah.
No, I think that's an important detail because I feel like there's so many ideas that people have and that's stewing around in the back of their mind. And then it's like an amazing thing when that actually does come to fruition.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was nice. Like, it was something I'd considered for a lot of time, and then I did this one documentary that kind of opened my eyes a little bit, and I was like, okay, after how we approached that and seeing how it was done, it was like I could do this. It's like honestly,
Yeah.
there's like it's different than scripted, but there's also an element that makes it kind of easier, and there's a lot of elements that make it harder. And then so yeah, we kind of approached it from that point, and then yeah, spent like 4 years working on the bloody thing. Yeah.
Wow. I feel like there's so much to talk about, but the actual topic, I was just in Hawaii and
Ah,
like
yeah, yeah,
we were in Pearl Harbor area and stuff. And I was just,
sure.
again, did not connect the two. I've heard of Pearl Harbor and all that stuff, being there and seeing, we drove past this part every day that was like a military base. And it's like, there's a whole world around this stuff. And like, if you're not in it, you really don't hear about it at all. We didn't go to the museum or anything, but even just seeing all these military bases and stuff, I was like, wait, what is going on? And it's
Mm.
all just happening and it's not out in the open, I feel.
It's kind of crazy, isn't it? I think that's kind of the interesting thing with this documentary is there's not a huge amount within it that if you didn't go out and do your research that you wouldn't be able to find yourself. There are
Right.
certainly elements that we discovered that and things that we've put in that are not things that you can just find out general public kind of thing, and that are new developments and stuff and kind of things that are still progressing like currently. But it's weird that they tested over 2,000 nuclear weapons. Multiple countries, China, Russia, US, UK, France, they all tested these huge weapons and all these crazy effects and impacts on so many people, literally millions of people, direct impacts on literally millions of people. And it's not in education, it's not in anything. And this kind of became so like kind of we started this thing as I saw that documentary and it became about atomic veterans, and it was like, okay, this is really cool because like it's this amazing experiential thing that no one really knows about and can even comprehend. It's kind of because it's incomprehensible really, the idea of being able to see an X-ray through your own hands kind of thing. It was kind of mad.
Right.
And then I found a bunch of these veterans in the UK. I was living in Toronto at the time, and I kind of went back to the UK and started talking to these guys, and we interviewed a few. And then I met this one guy called Alan Owen, who ended up becoming the main person in our documentary. And he is the son of an atomic veteran. And he introduced us to basically all of the crazy health effects and impacts and stuff that these guys had, and that it's been passed on to their descendants. And he runs this organization called LabRats. And LabRats he created it as a way of connecting all of these different global communities to talk to each other, because none of them were really talking to each other, despite the fact they're all after the same thing. They're all after compensation,
Right.
they're all after recognition and an apology for what was done to them, because a lot of them haven't had even an apology, let alone compensation or anything like beyond that. He introduced us to all these different communities, and that kind of broadened the horizon of the documentary. And then it was like, okay, there is a bigger story here than just this experiential thing of the atomic veterans and stuff. There's these huge health implications. There's this gigantic level of injustice on a global scale. And then that's what the documentary really became about.
Right.
Obviously the subject is nuclear weapons testing, these people affected, but the overall theme of this thing is just the insane amount of injustice.
Yeah.
What
And
what
so I'm a very amateur documentarian, but I found
Are we
like
all?
my first
No,
experience
no, no. She's a
making a
student.
documentary. It was like,
She's
I was
an
just
Emmy award-winning documentarian, just to be clear.
student Emmy.
Student Emmy. Yeah.
Still an
But
Emmy.
yeah, still an Emmy. But I remember when I did this program with my school and I got there and we had to come up with the entire idea and shoot the entire thing in 4 weeks. And I was like, how's this going to happen? And I
Sure.
couldn't get an interview for like 2 weeks. And then I did, and we shot the entire documentary in 2 days because it just, once you find one story, or at least I found, it just goes and it's like a spider web into all these different things. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's the coolest part to me about like, and it seems like that happened with you as well.
Yeah, yeah. That kind of like evolution of the story and that evolution of the idea and the concept and stuff is like, I mean, that's something you only really, you get that a little bit in scripted. And, sometimes all these happy accidents happen kind of thing. And you find things through actors and through locations and stuff that kind of like develop the story kind of thing. But I think that happens so much there's so much potential for that with documentary. And
Yeah.
this was like absolutely the case with this is, it evolved very quickly from its original intent. And then ultimately there were 16 different versions of the film that we went through, 16 different iterations till we landed on this. And that became the final edit.
I was just asking about the genetic aspect of this. You said that this was being can you talk about that? About the fallout from
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you
No,
did say
yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely,
like,
absolutely. So there's
what are the genetic
the
issues that came up from this?
what you've kind of got to look at is there's all of these different communities that have been impacted in different ways. So, like the atomic veterans, for instance, they were the guys that were stood in front of the bomb. And when that thing goes off, you have this huge impact of gamma rays that goes through your body. And this gamma radiation is the thing that altered their DNA. So then that has this long-lasting genetic issue on their children, their children's children, and so on and so on, okay, on that whole bloodline. But then you look at like the communities, for instance, like the uranium mining communities that we worked with, kind of thing. They live in lands, like often these are like indigenous communities, most of them, honestly. And they live in these lands that then the American government basically went back and started mining for uranium and transported it in a way that just leaves uranium everywhere. So then
Mm.
the genetic issues come from that, is like how that impacts that community on a bigger scale, on an economic scale as well, kind of thing. And then it passes down like that. Like with the Marshallese, for instance, as well, a lot of them were taken away from their homes and their environment and stuff, and it changed their entire way of life. So the genetic issues there are actually on a different level, because it's more about how the lifestyle change ultimately has impacted them, and they
Mm.
all have heart disease and diabetes and all these problems because now they're stuck on an American crappy fucking diet instead of actually, living the way they used to, fishing like out in the sea and in the ocean and stuff, which they
100%.
can't do anymore, because any of them that do, you're getting cancer from all these bloody fish and stuff that are just so irradiated, and it's ridiculous. So there's different genetic issues. I think the atomic veterans is the most kind of prominent one from a genetic standpoint, because that alteration in their DNA passes down that bloodline very like clearly. So I mean, basically the kind of science behind it is it's going to take about 500 years for that to kind of wash out of their DNA, and the kind of
Yeah.
the most kind of prominent story we put in the documentary is Alan. So Alan's dad witnessed 24 thermonuclear weapons explosions in about 78 days. So the amount of radiation that he had impact him is bonkers. So Alan's entire family never had any heart issues. That whole kind of family didn't have any heart conditions or anything or issues in the family until after his dad comes back from Christmas Island. And
Right.
what his dad ended up dying of a heart attack. Alan's brother died of a heart attack at the age of 31. His sister's had multiple heart attacks, but luckily is still alive. And Alan had a
Wow.
cardiac arrest a few years back. And they found that he has this condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is basically like a thickening of the muscle lining within the heart. And it's a genetic condition. It can only be passed on, basically. That never
Yeah.
existed in his family until him.
Right.
So
Hmm.
it's a very odd, he's kind of a medical marvel in the fact that he has this gene that never existed before in his
I
family bloodline. And now he's in a position that he's passing that. So,
I have a question. Do people in Europe
mm.
sue? Like in US, this would be like a class action lawsuit. Everybody's suing everybody. Like how are people dealing with
How
this?
does
Like
this go down?
yeah,
Yeah.
what the hell's going
So,
on?
well,
Like
so
what
this is the thing. This is part of our documentary as well, as part of the story of this as well. Is there was in the US someone who, there was a few people that did try to sue the US government for what had happened, but you can't sue the US government. Ultimately, one person did find a few loopholes and ways around things, and they compensated for. Don't quote me on the number. I think it's like $3 million or something kind of crazy. Something reasonable, not insane, but it was something. That was then where that kind of set a legal precedent for for the US, that basically meant if they were then going to compensate everybody who'd been affected, which is technically the entire US to some extent, closer to the test sites like to Nevada and Utah and New Mexico and stuff, there's more prominence in how deeply and how badly they've been affected. If you account for everybody, you're literally bankrupting the entire country. So
Right.
they couldn't go forward with this thing of leaving this legal precedent that we could be sued for every single person who has a claim against this, which is literally everyone. So they created something called the RECA program. It's the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. And this thing was basically, if you could prove that you lived in this specific area during this specific time and you have suffered from one of these like 18 cancers or whatever it is, or any health conditions, specific health conditions, then you can apply for the RECA compensation. And that compensation, the original claim was only $50,000. But the thing that kind of takes the piss and is this level of injustice really is that $50,000 was in exchange for signing a contract that doesn't allow you to sue the US government in perpetuity. So in other words, your entire family for the rest of time for those issues in exchange for 50 grand. Like that's not even enough to cover cancer treatment in
Like
the
one
US.
surgery. Yeah. Not
that sounds
even.
like
It's
something the
not
US
even.
would
Yeah.
sound shady.
Yeah.
Sounds real
And
shady.
then
And
they
I'm
canceled the
yeah,
RECA program after a number of years, and then that was while we were filming, actually, they canceled the RECA program, and then it's since been reinstated. It's been slightly expanded, but not much because there's certain areas again, and it's been slightly increased in value, so it's not $100,000. But again, it's still like it just doesn't even come
yeah.
close to, making up for the problem.
With the film, how are you doing selling it, getting interest, all the things?
It's actually been really well received, which is really good. We in total honesty, when we started this, I tried to get obviously the usual thing of public funding. We try and get greenlit with any kind of distribution and whatever kind of thing. We had no luck, honestly. It was
Mm,
really insanely difficult. So I ended up private financing like bits and pieces. It was on a shoestring budget, the whole thing, and some personal money and stuff as well from my work as a cinematographer. Just put money into that, and so there was no deals going into it. So it was completely independent. So it's acquisitions at the back end. And so we signed with a sales agent at IDFA back in October. That was for everything other than theatrical. We had no theatrical distribution, so there's nothing there. And the kind of idea for that was that I was going to go and do some screenings myself because there's a lot of interest to do that. And then so ended up booking about 20 different cinemas in the UK off the back of just trying to push this out there. And this theatrical distribution approached us and said we'd like to take on the film. So that's what we've been
wow.
doing recently. And then it comes out in cinemas in the UK this Thursday, May 14th.
Oh,
So that's good
wow.
stuff.
That's so
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Um, I wonder, has America been like, "Hell no," because it's, like, such
No,
a bad rep for us?
I know. You know what's interesting is we've been pushing social media stuff a lot right now. Yeah, one thing go really viral, which was great. Much it's not intentionally anti-US. It's just it's a
Yeah,
clip that
it is
doesn't really
anti-US,
paint
yeah.
the US in a great light.
But
It
also,
doesn't.
we're all pretty anti-US right now, so I feel like there is totally a
I
market for it.
Well, it's like I love
uh,
no, I actually love the US, and I'm
Well, yeah.
sad that the US is not holding up to its ideals, you know?
I think it's just certain politicians and stuff and certain things that need,
Yeah. Certain
fixing, and
Of
politicians
course,
that's
that
maybe the
yeah.
problem. Yeah.
He who must not
So,
be named. The other thing I'm curious about is that the Oppenheimer of it all, because this is coming
yeah.
out. I mean, I don't think the film was like exactly pro bombs, but like everyone was so hyped on it. And that's so like, was that ever like, when it's coming out, were you kind of like, what the hell is this? Like, I can't.
What was really funny is we were actually on a 30-day tour going through the US, we did 20 different states in the US and then flew over to Hawaii. And during that time, Oppenheimer came out. And some of the people that we actually met were in Oppenheimer. They were to do with the film. And they were also going to the premiere. It was like one of the many, many premieres they were doing all over the country kind of thing. So it was kind of funny because we were doing the film at that time and it became this big like talking point. And then myself and Rodrigo, my partner that was traveling with doing all this stuff, he basically we just kind of watched this thing. It was just like it's missing the main issue. It's like it's. I mean, it is what it says on the tin. It's Oppenheimer. It's his life. It's his
Yeah.
thing. But there was kind of a
yeah.
little moment in the film that kind of points to the fact that there is this guilt and this huge amount of people affected and stuff and everything, and then it kind of quickly pivots back to Oppenheimer and about his
Right.
experience of things and stuff, that's what the film is. That's what it makes sense about. The whole point of this film is it's like all the stuff after that.
Yeah.
Here's the cause, there's the
Yeah.
effect, and that's the thing. So it was for me, it was kind of like a good example of like, it was a good pitching piece ultimately, because it was kind of like, well, you've got this film again about like, atomic weapons and stuff and everything ultimately that has gained so much interest. It's grossed over $1 billion at the box office. It's won Oscars and stuff and everything. It just shows that there's an audience for this thing. That in combination with like Turning Point by Netflix. That was another big series that did
Mm.
incredibly well for Netflix. And then,
Mhm.
like this short doc that inspired this whole thing, that actually became Vice's most viewed video ever. So there's
Oh,
clearly an audience for this topic. That's what just made me so kind of like dumbfounded by the fact that like we distribution on the front end was just so difficult, because it's like this is clearly a
It's such a
like
thing. Yeah.
subject. Yeah, it's clearly an
is
audience.
y is your desire to get money back for these people, raise awareness? Like, what would be the most ideal outcome of this project?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of said this to these guys, when we were shooting this thing. Is ultimately, I'm not an activist. I'm not, I don't have any money to put into like, what you're doing or anything like
Mhm.
that kind of thing. It's not my thing. I'm a filmmaker, really. That's what it is. What I
Yeah.
can bring to this is I can use, my skill set to try and get as many eyes on the subject as possible and bring as much attention to the subject and the issues as possible. And it's then your guys' thing to take all of that attention and run with it for all the things you're trying to achieve. And that's really what we've been doing. And the main one, which is obviously part of the documentary as well, is about this Nuke's Blood scandal in the UK. The UK atomic vets are actually probably, out of all the atomic veterans in these different countries and stuff, are the least recognized and compensated. They still haven't had a public apology. They still haven't had any proper compensation. They haven't had anything. It took them until a couple of years ago to get given a medal after 70 years of kind of waiting and
Mm.
stuff. So, and a hell of a lot of campaigning to get it. So they're doing a Alan and Susie Boniface, who's also in the documentary and stuff, and the whole lab rats guys are all doing everything they can to try and get this compensation and recognition for those guys. And the
Mm.
documentary is doing a lot to help that. Back in January, we actually got sponsored by one of the politicians that supports those guys to screen in Parliament. So we screened in UK
Wow.
Parliament, and we got
Wow, that's a big deal.
yeah, it was good. Yeah, we got cross-party support from Green Party, Labour, Lib Dems, Conservative. So the four kind of major parties in the
Yeah.
UK all supported the issue and stuff. So it's really good. And then there was the Merlin database, which is part of the documentary. We talk about the Merlin database, which is an incredibly highly classified thing in the UK that basically contained all of the UK's kind of stuff to do with their atomic testing program. They've had that declassified, and that's kind of coming out in tranches right now, and that's having a huge impact on what they're doing. So us kind of bring the documentary out and kind of trying to bring as much attention to that as possible in combination with what they're doing now with this, that kind of coming together is hopefully going to result in some actual compensation, actual recognition for these guys, which
Yeah.
seems to be happening. So it's good. Hopefully in the next few months there's going to be some serious movement on that.
I'm so curious about at least the US people. How did these guys vote? I feel like there a lot of veterans are Trumpy and it's so wrapped up in what's happening today in the world. Do you know? I'm just so curious.
It's weird. No, I don't know. Honestly, it's weird. I think the ones we met anyway are pretty jaded by
Yeah.
the US and everything else. So I would have probably guessed that they probably wouldn't have voted for
Wouldn't
Trump.
vote.
I know
Yeah.
specifically one guy we interviewed who did not make it into the documentary. He
Mm.
was actually a Vietnam vet. I can tell you 100% right now, he did not vote for Trump. I can guarantee that. But the interesting thing, actually, the really weird thing, is that RICA program that I was telling you about earlier, it actually got reinstated as part of the big beautiful bill.
No way.
So
What?
it's this really weird thing, and it was basically thrown in last minute. And I can't remember Mary Dixon, who's in the documentary, was telling us about this. She was basically, it was put in there as a really kind of last minute thing. Basically, I think it was not intentional. Basically, it was not intentional to give these guys any hope whatsoever. But they managed to attach it and get it put through. Ultimately, that really terrible piece of legislation actually helped some people, which is it
Huh.
feels a little bit weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm just so curious because I feel like I've grown up in these liberal bubbles my whole life and learning about these stories and how the US government's affecting people. It's like you really can go either way. And it's to me
Mm.
so interesting learning about it
Well,
just
You
being
mean you mean
kind
either
of
way in support or against kind of thing? Or what do you mean?
I think so. I think when you leave big cities in the US, it's just at least I feel like a complete idiot. I can't gauge which way you're leaning. I just don't know because I'm honestly guarded, but that's besides the point.
I've spent a lot of time in the US and stuff. I haven't spent much time in the US since Trump's been back in office. The last time I did was probably about 6 months into his term and stuff, and seeing signs on one of the universities basically saying that ICE agents are not allowed in the building, which was kind of, I was like, oh, I didn't realize it was that bad. And then you talk to people and it's
Mm.
like, oh, it's that bad. It's like,
Yeah,
Jesus Christ. Yeah,
totally.
so how do
crazy.
do you find it? Do you find as an artist, is England more hospitable to artists? Do you get more aid? Do you get funding? Compared to what your US counterparts. I worry that it's
Yeah.
too expensive for real artists to live in New York anymore. And, the US is so inhospitable really now to the arts. There's not a lot. They've cut
Yeah.
the endowment for the arts. There's, you know,
Yeah.
It's tricky.
I would say it's definitely better than the US by the sounds of it, for sure. I think they just introduced a new tax credit here that really helps more like independent filmmakers as well, kind of thing. And the tax credit stuff here is actually really good anyway. The same for Canada. The tax credit was the thing that drove a lot of things. And the public funding in Canada, it was pretty good. By the time I left, it was like it's in a bit of a shambles, frankly.
I feel like you live such a nomadic lifestyle for this, like, entire time. Like, how was
Yeah.
that personally?
Yeah, I've kind of traveled for the yeah, I've always traveled for work and stuff. We've shot in about 40 different countries at this point. I love it, frankly. It's great. It is nice. I've actually just moved in here back in London into a new place. It's nice to actually have a place and call home again. The last year I have been completely kind of nomadic and all over the place kind of.
You love this nomadic life, living out of hotels and suitcases and temporary setups and all of it.
Yeah, it can be kind of fun. It's fun sometimes, and then others you want something else, ebbs and flows.
Yeah. I feel like I would love it. That's why I'm asking. I, like, wanna be in
Oh, I
Really?
see. Right.
it.
That's funny.
I didn't know,
Yeah, are
Fiona.
you kidding? Like, this guy's been to 40 countries. 40 countries, like, what? I haven't even been to 40 states of America, where I'm from.
So, I mean,
I
you
think
must be traveling though if you're shooting documentaries as well, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, well,
she
I did a program with my school, and it was in Spain, so I got to do that,
Oh,
which was so fun. Yeah.
oh, great. My partner's Spanish. Which part of Spain?
We were in Madrid for 2 weeks, and then
Yeah.
Sevilla for 1, and then Salamanca
Mhm.
for 1,
Oh,
which was
nice. Yeah,
not
yeah.
great.
She's from Madrid, so yeah, been to
Oh,
Madrid a
yeah.
couple of times now. Lovely. Yeah.
I love
Sevilla's
Madrid. But my was based in this town called El Palmar, like, it's a really small beach town, like, on the Andalusian coast. Yeah, but Salamanca, it's funny that you made that face. They intentionally had that week be the week that we had to edit our stuff because they didn't want us to go out or anything. So, they
Oh,
were like, "You're gonna go to this random town and not be able to do anything so we can, like, lock down and edit."
that's quite good though. That's quite good.
Yeah.
So actually, a funny thing with this, with the editing on this thing, it took a year post because my original editor, long story short, screwed me over, and we were left in a position that I have no more money to pay anybody else. It was kind of like, who else knows this documentary better than me? It's it's just me. So it's like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to edit this thing, so we haven't got the money for anybody else to do it.
Oh, wow.
And it kind of became of like a thing of like locking myself away in the basement kind of thing, trying to figure this
Yeah.
thing out. And I realized that if you want to learn a new skill, the best thing you can do is actually edit a documentary, because you procrastinate so much that you end up doing just literally anything to not be editing anymore. So you end up learning all sorts of new crap instead of actually editing a documentary.
Totally, and I feel like editing's one of those things that's so, like, for me, I'm, like, ADHD, scatterbrain, like, can't, like, it's so meticulous and so exact, and especially when you're the one who's shooting it, if you have a vision and you, like, need it to be
Yeah,
that, but then it's like, "Oh, I have to spend 85 minutes cutting this little part and then moving the audio back." It's so meticulous. I think it's really respectable, people who can get down and they're an editor. Like, I'm just like,
yeah,
"Wow."
seriously. And documentary editors that go through just endless footage. It is truly a very specific
yeah.
skill set. Really hard.
So do you feel like you know every line of every interview? Like, you just know this I'm sure you know the issue so much better because you had to rewatch these things over and over again too.
100%. Yeah, every single time. I can quote every word from that documentary at this point.
Wow.
It's quite depressing. We'd had some good fortune. I was working on an Amazon series a couple of years ago. We had the editor Eamon O'Connor on that, who's one of the editors for Navalny. You
Oh,
Zoom
I
call the
love
guy.
that.
On the back of his Zoom, he's got an Oscar, just like sat in the back, which is pretty baller, really, because I was working with him as well. I got some advice from him on the edit and the cut and stuff and everything, so that was kind of really helpful. I got a lot of good editor friends that we were kind of like sending it to and checking cuts and stuff and getting some opinions. So it wasn't just it was me editing, but it wasn't like I was going in blind and with no kind of like experience notes or anything. So it was kind of good.
More questions, Fiona? Documentarian to documentarian.
No, I think that it's such a cool project and so under talked about. I feel like I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, fair
Yeah.
enough. Yeah, I mean, you guys are in the US, so I mean, we're actually going to be screening at the UN in November. There might be a
Whoa.
US screening before that, but we are screening at the UN in November as well.
Have you showed it to anyone that was like, "No." Like, I don't care.
Honestly, no. Yeah, actually, no. Like some of the previous cuts, they were a bit like, "This is shit," and I was like, "Okay, well, great, good job. Back to the drawing board," which we did. Obviously, honestly, the thing, that kind of reaction I wanted was the same reaction that I had like 10 years ago with this thing, which was just this kind of sense of like, "How have I not heard about this?" And that ultimately has been the reaction from everyone who's seen it so far. I really liked the idea of, our first screening of this was like a private screening, cast and crew and some journalists
Mhm.
and politicians and stuff, and this kind of thing. And obviously, there's people that care about the subject, so you kind of get feedback from that, and it's like, it's kind of what you expect because they're not exactly going to be like, well, this is terrible, So
Right.
it's a little bit biased, kind of thing. And then
Mhm.
the next screening we had was a kind of advanced screening before our like world premiere that we did in Leicester Square. I purposely ran it as a free screening and sent out invites to literally just random people and anybody that we could pull in that had nothing to do with the thing, that had no care for me or for any of the people involved, kind of thing. So it was a very unbiased audience. And even that was the same reaction. It was just, I was meant to do 10 minutes at the end of the screening just answering questions. It turned into an hour of like all these like just barrage of questions about stuff. And that was really kind of heartwarming because it's like people do actually care, and it's,
Well, I feel like it's
you
like
know,
people also care
mm.
about issues that affect them, and, like, this affects everyone.
So what's next?
Well, obviously we're going to do a cinema release and hopefully some like streaming stuff after that. For me, I've got a couple of projects that I'm trying to get greenlit. We'll see what happens. We've got a couple of scripts. One that's based on the similar subject matter, but it's one specific story about this
Mhm.
what they call a cloud flyer, which is one of the guys that flew through the atomic clouds, and the
Why did they
his
even
story
have
is just
people doing that?
Yeah.
collecting
Why is that even
samples, collecting
Collecting
samples
samples of,
from
like, the air? Or, like
the actual atomic mushroom cloud as it's going up.
I
Like
mean, I'm
the
just like, how to know I mean, I'm sure they did. No, like, 2 plus 2 equals 4 people, like, this is a bad idea,
This is the thing. Oh, they knew what was going on. They knew what they were doing. They knew what they were
and they
sending
just don't
people in
care.
to do. No, not one bit.
Did you have
500,000
any
soldiers and like 2,000 tests. What are you learning at test number 1,744 that you don't know at test number 10?
right. And how do
Mm.
you like, did you speak to anyone from, like, the people that were, like, organizing this, or was it just, like, kind of, like, focused on the victims of it?
We tried. We
Right.
really, really tried to talk to.
Yeah, but
And
they
so
don't
there
probably they
is.
probably don't wanna talk about it.
No, well, this is okay. So there is one funny. I'll tell you one funny story very quickly because it's
Mhm.
actually so random. There's a place in the US called Hanford, which I'm not sure if you've heard of. It's in Washington State. It is the most radiated place in the whole of North America. There's already been $100 billion spent in decontaminating the area. It's gone over budget and gone way past the timeline of what was expected by at least 40 years. And they expect to spend at least another $100 billion to still get this done. The issue is what Hanford was. It was a plant for refining uranium, plutonium, one or the other, for use within the atomic weapons, which were
Mhm.
being used for testing, and the ones that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That place basically had these pools. There's like 140 something pools, I think it is, that contain all the nuclear waste, all underground pools, massive pools. And these things, all of them, 100% of them failed. All of them leaked, every single one. So there's all this nuclear waste that is just leaking around the Hanford area, that if it gets into the groundwater, that's spreading straight down the Colorado River, and that's really gigantically problematic. And it's this close to happening. Hence why they're spending so much money on trying to stop that from happening, but it's not really, you know, in the news or anything. It's a
Right.
huge, huge issue. We were in Hawaii. Myself and Rodrigo were traveling around Hawaii, working with the Marshallese people on the south side of the island, and we were staying in like the north side of the island. So on our way down, we got called back. They called us into this church gathering thing for this last day that we weren't expecting to do. So we came back down, and on the way, we had about 30 minutes or so spare, and there's this chocolate place where he grows cocoa plants on the side of like this cocoa farm, and he makes the chocolate there for you, and you eat this thing. I'm like a huge chocolate fan, so I was like, okay, this sounds amazing. So we pull over, we go and buy this stuff, and he asks us, like, he sees the cameras in the car, and he's like, oh, what are you guys doing? I was like, oh, we're shooting a documentary. Oh, what about nuclear weapons testing? And he goes, oh, wow, I grew up in Hanford. And I was like, no way. Like, hold the phone. Like, hold on a minute. So we'd spoken to people that grew up in Hanford, but we'd never managed to find anybody that was part of the Hanford, like, who works there or who was part of that thing. And I was like, so what were you doing at Hanford? He goes, I was one of the guys that helped build and design the pools that stored the nuclear waste. I was like,
Oh my
oh
You're
my
like,
God.
God, get the
"Okay,
cameras,
dude."
get the cameras,
Yeah.
get the. Yeah. So we shot with the guy, we recorded it. It's really amazing, like this hugely serendipitous thing. He told us all about it, and it was just crazy. The only problem that we had, and the reason why we didn't put it in the documentary, is because I couldn't prove any of the things he was saying. I had certain proof for certain things. Who I knew he wasn't lying about his time there and stuff. It made sense, but I couldn't prove any of the things because it's not documented. Or if it is, it's kept
At
secret.
all. And he's a government worker. Like, he is working for this thing, and it's not documented.
He worked for the DOE, the Department of Energy, yeah,
How is that possible?
the Atomic Energy Commission. AEC, I can't remember the thing. Yeah, it's crazy. And now he's crazy. He had like this like wicker hat, really long. Like he looked like some wise old sage with a Hawaiian shirt and selling chocolate on the side of the road. It was mad, completely mad.
Did he feel, was there like a bad feeling towards it? Or was it like, yeah, it's just what I did. Like, this is my job when I lived back there.
I don't know if I mean, it probably doesn't. It didn't seem like he felt great about it, but it was kind of
Right.
like, it's not like he's like, oh well, I purposely did this kind of thing. It's like, I was hired to do a job, and I did the job, and it didn't work,
Yeah.
and it's like, I was one of many, hundreds or thousands of people involved in the thing. It's like I think there's no direct guilt, but there's like indirect guilt kind of thing.
And I feel like this is one of those things where it's like, there's no one person to blame. It's like the system of it all. Like, did you find at the end there was the US government is the culprit, or is it one sentiment or idea, or was it just all these people are doing what they have to do, going to work, getting their shit done, being who they are, and then this mistake
Yeah.
kind of happened?
It's multiple governments. That's the thing. It's
Yeah.
not just the US government. It's the UK government. It's the French government. It's the Chinese and the Russian government as well. None of them are any better than any of the others. Most of them did not test within their own lands. And, the US did test in Nevada, absolutely, and it did in New Mexico for the one test as well. But it tested all the massive weapons, all the thermonuclear weapons in the Marshall Islands. It
Yeah.
vaporized one of their islands. Like they completely destroyed that place. And
Yeah.
for what? Like ultimately, it was just a huge pissing contest between them and Russia during the Cold War. That's all it
Yeah.
really was. You know, um,
There's not one benefit from this whole thing. There's like, I can't, it's just
people will,
mutual destruction.
but
Will people say
it's mutually.
differently?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's mutually assured destruction, and that's the idea. That's meant to be the benefit, isn't it? It's mutually assured destruction, so that if you come at me with a nuclear weapon, I come at you with a nuclear weapon, everybody dies. So no one fires. That's the idea. But it only takes one madman to just play off one thing because he's got nothing else to lose. And if you
Yeah.
think about it, like, how many of those people can you name right now that seems like, well, they got nothing else to lose, you know, they'd be willing to
100%.
do something like that. Exactly. And it's on both sides. And,
Yeah.
so it's like mutually assured destruction. The idea is like, makes sense. I don't think it ultimately works in this
Yeah.
concept. And we asked all of our subjects the same thing which wasn't really the focus of the documentary, but I really wanted to get people's opinion on this, which was, do you believe that nuclear action is inevitable? In other words, do you believe that nuclear weapons are going to be used in conflict? And it was the most profound like answers to that, because you obviously get people who are people who've suffered from these like weapons and stuff, and from the testing and stuff. So there's like the answers are really wild and varied, and they kind of, you can see on this level of like PTSD of like, nope, it can't, it just can't. And you get other people who are more realistic, like, well, realistically, it is going to. You don't, the cat's out of the bag. This thing's going to happen again. At
Yeah.
some
There's
point.
no way that like every government in the world has this thing. Not everyone, but you know what I'm saying. And like
Yeah,
nothing will ever
yeah.
come out of it. 'Cause I'm wonder I don't know if you can remember your sentiment before this whole thing and after this thing, like, what changed for you about this topic? Or, like, what do you think was, like, the biggest, would never have known this?
There's lots of things I never would have known. Like there's tons and tons and tons of stuff. Like it was just such an expansive thing. All
Or
the
I
different
guess one
communities
that's, like,
and
the most
yeah.
moving to you. What was one that you really feel like
The
is gonna, like, stick with you out of this?
the thing that really I think meeting the Marshallese people was really tough because they've just it's not like they were this island nation that was ultimately completely peaceful and stuff. Don't get me wrong, like it's not, they were invaded by the Japanese and and they kind of they fought each other between islands and stuff and everything, but ultimately they had this way of life that was so true to, what human beings really are on like a, on a fundamental level kind of thing.
Mm,
I think they had that torn away from them in a way that's just so brutal. It was kind of like the missionaries go over to the Marshall Islands and kind of convert a load of them to Christianity and then use that concept of their faith against them as a way of being like, look, we're going to test on your islands. You give us permission to test on your islands because it's for the good of world peace and for God. And then they do that and they're promised that they'll get to go back and they can't. And they have
right.
their entire way of life destroyed and everything's gone, and it's just, that's such a, even for the Marshall Islands are like small atolls, like spread around a huge, like US sized area kind of thing. If you put all the land together, it's only like the size of Rhode Island, but it's very spread out. So there's, the Bikini Island and Eniwetok are the ones that are like completely no go. So there are other islands that are still capable of being inhabitable, but they're just destroyed in the sense that
Mm,
like you now got this American thing, like they're the most popular food there now is not like the fish they catch from the ocean because they can't because it's all radiated. It's spam. It's
yeah,
like canned spam is like it's just like it was so upsetting. And to hear one of the Marshallese guys that we talked about saying like he can't go back to his island where his mum and his dad are buried, and that in exchange for all of this nightmarish situation, he was given $73 every 3 months by the US government. And it's like that was the one time that during the documentary I actually cried.
yeah,
Which is, because you got to try and disconnect a little bit and stuff. I think these incredibly depressing stories and really, difficult to listen to. But that guy just hit me in a way that I don't know. There was something, yeah, crazy about it.
yeah. Well, I'm glad there's someone in this world who is caring about this and amplifying it and all the things, so,
Yeah, sure enough.
yeah.
There's a lot of people.
Thank
There's a
you.
lot.
Well, thank you so much and so nice to meet you.
Yeah, Andrew. Cheers. Yeah.